What's going on, guys? Welcome to Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights, where I'm your host, Matthew Raridan. And man, we've got a lot to cover today. We've got playoff matchups that just happened, and some surprises, some that weren't to others. But obviously, it is something that we need to talk about because everyone's talking about it. But first things first, I want to introduce my co host. First, we've got David Street,
What's up, everybody? Go Bucks!
and we've got Ed Smith.
Hook 'em, y'all.
You know, guys, do you remember the scene in The Waterboy, Coach Klein, where he's holding the phone, the cordless phone, or it's a corded phone, but not plugged in? He's over here. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Well, guys, that's me right now because, well, out of everyone on this podcast, well, mine's the only team that lost in the playoffs. If you didn't know, the Buccaneers did win, and so did the Green Bay Packers, which are my co-host teams. But me, I'm Coach Klein. I'm talking to my mom, imaginary. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it because, well, my Pittsburgh Steelers lost, and we are going to talk about that. But first, I want to talk about actually a game where I was wrong as far as the outcome goes, and that is the Los Angeles Rams and the Detroit Lions. This was homecoming. This was Matthew Stafford coming back to Detroit, and there was something that told me, well, I feel like the Rams are going to win this game. Matthew Stafford is going to come back to Detroit, and he's going to pull off the victory here. And, well, that's not what happened at all. It was a very close game, and the final score ended up being 24-23 for the Lions. But this was really big, guys. First home playoff win for the Detroit Lions since 1991. I know I speak on behalf of me and David. We weren't even a thought in 1991, but I'm sure Ed was living it up. But me and David were not a thought. So it's like, where were you guys at in 1991? And did you remember when this happened?
I watched that game. I
Okay.
remember distinctly watching that game.
Yep, not me. So, but
Nope, not me either.
uh,
We did not exist back then.
we did not, like, just like I said, we were not even a thought. With me and David both being born in 1994, but this was amazing. This for the NFL and especially the city of Detroit. City of Detroit, especially with the Pistons, are just a travesty. So to have something like this is actually great because 1991 was a long time ago. So that is a huge congrats to the Detroit Lions and what they're doing there. But I want to talk a little bit more about Matthew Stafford and this homecoming. I mean, Stafford was booed. This was, I was a little shocked when I was hearing some of the boos because I'm like, well, Stafford was very loyal to the city of Detroit, and he was a phenomenal player. But he did get traded. And what did he do right after he got traded? Well, he won a Super Bowl with the Rams. Is that his fault? No, it's
Yeah,
not.
how are you going to boo a guy who got traded? And if I remember correctly, it wasn't like he demanded a trade. He got traded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's fans. That's just how it is. I mean, your fans, you're riled up. Your team just made the playoffs. I mean, for a long, long time. So there's some understanding there, but needless to say, they booed him. He did not facilitate this trade. He did win a Super Bowl. Once again, that is not his fault. That's props to him. I mean, what's crazy is when he was in the Super Bowl, do you know where the number one like jersey sales were at? We're in Detroit for his jersey. So Detroit still loved him, but this is a playoff game. Just because it's your homecoming doesn't mean we got to like you. So, but Stafford, though, his homecoming did fall short of success because his team did not win. He did put up one heck of a fight. I mean, 367 yards, 2 touchdown passes. But to me, the star of that Los Angeles team, well, it's not Aaron Donald, who is always talked about, and it wasn't Stafford, even though it was homecoming. It was Mr. Puka Nacua. The legend continues. The history continues. And now he has another milestone that will be in the record books, and that is the most receiving yards for a rookie in a playoff game. with 181 yards. I mean, this guy has been doing it nonstop all year. And like we've said, even on the last episode, if it wasn't for CJ Stroud, this guy would walk away with Offensive Rookie of the Year. But that just shows you how great CJ Stroud is, which we will talk about. But Puka Nacua, he passed DK Metcalf, who was the previous record holder for that stat, who had 160 yards. But Puka Nacua, guys, it's like him and Cooper Kupp just switch bodies. I mean, Cooper Kupp, it's like I get he's had injuries, but he's nowhere to be found. But Puka Nacua, that guy is balling out. So I'm excited to see what his career is like, especially after this history of a year he's had. But Jared Goff, let's switch to the other side. Jared Goff has had this kind of resurgence here in Detroit, especially with Dan Campbell. They are kind of two peas in a pod, and I mean that in such a great way because I feel like they complement each other. And when you hear of a head coach and your starting quarterback complement each other, you start to see great things. And Goff, his numbers have always pretty much stayed very similar. He has improved coming into this year with a career best for him, a 67.3% completion rate. But what is happening that you aren't going to see on the stat sheet is how comfortable and how happy he is in the city of Detroit and playing for this Lions team. And that's where success will come. Just like I said with him and Dan Campbell, 1-2 punch there with head coach, a starting quarterback combo. But there is going to be a lot of success for this Detroit Lions team. I'm impressed what they're doing, and I'm glad to say that I was wrong with my prediction because Detroit, they deserved to have won this game, and I'm happy to see it. They will be playing the Tampa Bay Bucks next, which we will talk about as well. But another game that happened over the weekend, and honestly, I think the three of us predicted this game, and I know Ed is loving our prediction because, well, Ed, go Pack, go.
Thanks for the handoff, Matthew. And you talked about a head coach and a quarterback becoming comfortable with each other. That is what's happening with Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love. Since for the last 9 games, Jordan Love is 7-2, 5 of them playoff teams with 21 touchdowns and 1 interception. That is an outstanding stretch for a young quarterback that really has grown into not only learning the position the last 3 years under Aaron Rodgers, but has really learned the leadership aspect of it with this young skill position group that he has around him. It has just been a pleasure to watch because what you're seeing is a quarterback that has matured behind the scenes, and now we're seeing the fruition of what the organization thought 3 years ago when they drafted him in the first round, despite Aaron Rodgers being so blindsided and so upset about it that he went out and won 2 more MVPs. I'm not mad at that. But something that complements that is a run game. Aaron Jones, since he's gotten back from his injury, it's been 4 straight games of over 100 yards on just 20 to 22 carries, and an amazing, just surgence of a running game to complement the calm, cool, collected Jordan Love in the pocket, distributing to so many wide receivers at this point. We're talking Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, and now Christian Watson, along with Aaron Jones out of the backfield. We'll see about A.J. Dillon and his injury situation coming up. But that is a tremendous operation of the offense. This is really the offense that LaFleur wanted to bring into Green Bay, but had to cater to the diva and let him run it the way that he wanted to for the first couple of seasons. And it worked out well at that time. But now we truly get to see what LaFleur's vision is, and Jordan Love is executing it to perfection. Now, on the flip side of this game, which the Packers won 48-32, and it was not that close. Guys, do you all agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Dallas scored a couple late touchdowns, but it was a complete beatdown by Green Bay from start to finish.
Absolutely. And, it got me to thinking, being a Cowboys fan is almost like dating an OnlyFans girl. And let me explain real quick. It's been 20 seasons with the Cowboys with a 500 record or better since their last Super Bowl in 95. Okay? They are fun. They are dynamic. They are sexy. They are bright and hot during the regular season. But when you get to the postseason and get to the point where you're supposed to put a ring on it, they fall apart. It is just tragic how bad this organization has become in the postseason. They have not made an NFC championship game in those in those 20 seasons that I was talking about. That's 13 playoff appearances and 0 NFC championship appearances. If you told me in 1996 that there would be that in 2023 or 2024 now, you would have the Cowboys be in the playoffs 13 more times and never reach an NFC championship game, I would not believe you, because that is the tradition of what that franchise is, and it is just not there. And what's the common thread between all of it? It's Jerry Jones. We all know the story on the Jerry Jones bandwagon, but with this iteration of it, that Jerry Jones train is continue to move forward. But with a loss like this, as demoralizing as a loss this was, who's to blame? And is anybody, need to get fired for this, a game like this that continues to happen over and over and over again? Is it Dak or is it Mike McCarthy? I got to tell you, I'm in Dak's corner here because, even though he has, thrown multiple interceptions at bad times. And that pick six was at a bad time during this game. He has not played terribly. He has just had to play from behind because he is putting his team in a bad situation. He is playing well outside of those few mistakes that he has to try and make up for. And CeeDee Lamb, as of this year, he's the go-to guy. He's the go-to guy to help Dak Prescott out on a situation like this. With 135 receptions on the year and 749 yards, 12 touchdowns, 9.7 yards an attempt. That is a huge number when it comes to that. So it's got to fall on Mike McCarthy. If you look at his career over 17 years, he has a 500 winning percentage in the playoffs in 22 games. And let's be honest, most of that was Aaron Rodgers pulling rabbits out of his hat, with Hail Marys into the back of the end zone to, keep the Packers' hopes alive through most of that. So was it really Mike McCarthy getting all those wins? Nah, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, and I think
Go ahead.
if you don't mind me adding to your point, Ed, and obviously you certainly know about this, but in Mike McCarthy's coaching career, there's really been only one time in his entire coaching career when he had a combination of an elite quarterback and an elite defense, and that was 2010. And of course, that was the only time that he ever won a Super Bowl, and probably the only Super Bowl he ever will win as a head coach.
Well, you had Charles Woodson on the on the defense there, and was a game wrecker as well. I mean, and that was that budding superstar group of wide receivers for the Packers as well, during that time period. But now you go and look at what his record is without Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. It's 1-3. Out of 4 appearances in 4 games in the playoffs since he got to Dallas, 1-3. That is not good enough. The playoffs will expose when you do not have your details and your clock management buttoned up, and he is exposed every single year about how poorly he manages the team and the clock in those tight situations. So I'm going to say Mike McCarthy needs to move on. The problem is there aren't many coaches that can step in and do as well as he has, keeping the Cowboys relevant, especially during the season. Because during the season, with Dallas, he has a 627 win percentage. That is a fantastic number, but that doesn't get you championships. Regular season wins do not give you championships. And if the Cowboys are really serious about going to the Super Bowl and not just filling seats in Cowboy Stadium, then they need to move on and figure out who is going to get them there, because it's certainly not Mike McCarthy. Now, I will say that on the opposite side, Matt LaFleur, probably one of the best coaching jobs that is not being talked about in the NFL this year, because you're going from one of the best quarterbacks of all time to an unproven third year quarterback and a very unproven wide receiver core with a leaky defense and a beat up offensive line. And here they are going to the second round of the playoffs. It is a masterful job of what Matt LaFleur has been able to do, through this year, because it's been a real flip this house situation since they were last in the NFC divisional round and, and NFC championship game. Almost everybody's gone. There's only a couple of players that I can remember that are still on the team from that time period, like Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary, just a couple of guys. But this has been truly a fantastic coaching job of Matt LaFleur, and Matthew, you've seen a lot of what I've seen. What are there some takeaways that you're getting out of that too?
Oh, absolutely, and it's like great minds think alike, because that was actually gonna be one of my biggest points. We just did the whole media forget that Matt LaFleur was their head coach, because and Green Bay will take that. They will be glad that he wasn't talked about much this year, because it seemed like every time he was talked about much, he ended up, failing when they needed him. I mean, this is a guy that several years ago was talked about as one of the best coaches when the Packers only had 3 losses and they were just looking unstoppable. And Matt LaFleur this, Matt LaFleur that, but to kind of sneak in under the rug this year, I think that benefits him and this Green Bay Packers team even more. But let's not forget that Matt LaFleur is still a great coach, and we were able to see it on full display this last weekend against the Cowboys as he dissected them. But really quick about the Cowboys is I don't think there's any coach right now that could go in and change us until Jerry Jones is gone. I think we all can agree with that, is that he is unfortunately the cancer to the Dallas Cowboys. And until he's gone, well, the Cowboys are not going to win anything. He wants to stay around forever and ever and ever. And, I'm not a big fan of the Cowboys. So by all means, stay around, Jerry. You're just going to keep seeing your team lose and lose and lose. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. But there is not really any coach right now that could come in and probably win, unfortunately, because of him.
Yeah, and just one more point I want to add about the game here is that something that I never took into consideration for Green Bay that I probably should have taken into consideration is that the Packers were one of the hottest teams coming into the playoffs, having won 6 of their last 8. Now, that being said, I still thought that maybe they would have lost to heck, if I remember correctly, like I thought Green Bay was going to get crushed. I just thought that their youth and their inexperience would be too much for them to handle, especially being in Jerry's world. But obviously it did not hinder them whatsoever. So
Yeah, and one thing to not take for granted is Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. All right. Th- there is a side of players that come out when it means the most. And I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes had this dynamic game, but I want to talk about the Dolphins and the Chiefs game here, David, because we heard all throughout the week how cold this game was going to be. We've heard how cold the Kansas City Chiefs have been this year. They aren't a hot team, but the playoffs come around and sometimes you start seeing their true colors. Well, who true colors showed this game, David?
well, a couple of things really stood out to me in this game. One, it was fairly obvious, just watching the game, that the Dolphins just did not want to be there. They had no interest in dealing with the cold weather, and you could tell that they were not used to playing in that kind of a cold weather game. But the other thing that really stood out to me was that we got the Rashi Rice show, guys. I mean, Kansas City loses Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins, and yet it seems that they have found another weapon in Rashi Rice. He put up 130 yards and one touchdown, completely shredded Miami's defense, and in his last two games, he's been averaging 129 yards. So lose Tyreek Hill, and you gain another weapon who will no doubt. I mean, he is your number one wide receiver, and especially with Travis Kelsey, kind of having a down year. It's obviously huge of the Chiefs that they have someone that they can lean on. And listen, like we've talked about it before, that even though the Chiefs did not look that impressive this year, at least compared to what we've seen before, what did we always say? At the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes, and he has more than proven that he can step up whenever it matters the most. But honestly, guys, and we've also talked about this, we need to talk about just how fraudulent the Miami Dolphins were. Okay, you want to know how fraudulent they were against losing teams. And by the way, this includes both regular season and postseason. Against losing teams, they averaged 35 points a game. But against winning teams, they averaged only 16 points a game, okay? That drop off in production against better competition is extremely alarming. It is so glaring. Hey, look, all right? Credit where credit is due. They did beat the teams that they were supposed to beat, okay? But it is just so obvious that they are who we thought they were. Okay, they beat up on cruddy teams, and they got their asses whooped by the only good teams that they played. And listen, this is what Mike McDaniel's second year with the team, and he's led them to the best success that they've had in quite some time. I saw some Dolphins fans on Twitter calling for his head, calling for Tua to be traded. Like, just shut the hell up. Like, I understand you're frustrated, but there's a reason why you guys are not in charge of the team. All right, and you don't need to fire. You don't need to fire everybody every time something goes wrong. Could McDaniel have done a better job? Yes, absolutely. But you cannot justify getting rid of him. Unlike another certain coach that we're going to be talking about later, and that guy, I don't think he deserves to be fired necessarily, but it's a lot more. It's a lot more justified, at least. But we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, weather plays such a big factor in games. Last year, we saw actually the Buffalo Bills head down to Miami to play the Dolphins. And if you don't remember, this was the game where Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, they were cramping because they were not used to the weather down in Miami. Well, guys, the Dolphins, fish out of water, they did not look comfortable playing in that cold in Kansas City. But here's one thing that I want to say too. I mean, the cold is it's really bad. The weather there was horrible. But Chief fans, I you pride yourselves on being the loudest fans out there. Arrowhead's the loudest stadium. y'all couldn't even sell this game out. You guys were practically giving tickets away. Taylor Swift sells her tickets cheaper than what you guys were. I mean, for more money than you guys were probably even getting for your most expensive ticket. I mean, it was embarrassing to see them practically give these tickets away. This is a playoff game. This is the defending Super Bowl champs. So I just wanted to say that really quick. But as far as the games goes, like I said, fish out of water. Dolphins, Tua did not look comfortable whatsoever, and it was just a different atmosphere. Yeah. So I mean those are I mean great points, David, on that game itself. But this was another game that I don't really think that we saw kind of this outcome. At least I'll say the score. Maybe you guys could have thought you knew who was going to win this game because we've talked really high about this team. But I want to talk about the Browns and the Texans. We've talked high about the Texans and possible coach of the year, possible offensive rookie of the year. But this Browns team, this defense that has been steady, that has been great all year. Well, they came into Houston and well, what changed, Ed?
Well, the Browns defense that was so vaunted went completely in the toilet.
Yeah,
And
let me just say something about that, like real quick. Like they're talking about number one defense, like in terms of like usually when people say number one defense, they're talking about total yards, which might be the most overrated way to even value a defense. But it's like this is supposed to be the number one defense. Like they've been not just in the Houston game, but that defense has been getting burned all year. But sure, number one defense.
well, when you're talking about a passing league that racks up a lot of yards, because every rule in the book is geared toward an offensive player gaining more yards, and we'll talk a little bit more about the finer points on that one here in a bit. Uh, when you're talking about the Browns defense, overall, you're exactly right. In the last three games, they have been cooked for over 348 yards per game. When for the season they were at 275 yards a game. So and you're looking at three quarterbacks that did that to them is Zach Wilson, Jake Browning, and now C.J. Stroud. Not exactly murderer's row. I mean, the only guy that I could even come close to saying that he is him is C.J. Stroud. Because through this season, he threw for over 4,000 yards as a rookie with 23 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. That is a tremendous ratio right there. He cooked the Browns for 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions in this game alone. Overall, the window is wide open for the Texans winning because he's on the first year of his rookie contract. That is allowing DeMeco Ryans and that entire ownership group for the Texans to build a team around him, similar to what San Francisco is doing out there, building the team up around a rookie quarterback that you can afford all these big-time players so you can make a run and have a wider window to go ahead and get that championship down to Houston where it belongs for once since 1961, Oilers. But when you're talking about C.J. Stroud himself, he ranked number 2 in yards per attempt in the NFL this season. He ranked number 1 in interception percentage. He ranked number 7 in total yards passing and number 11 in touchdown percentage. Guys, this is somebody that is really making a case to get into that elite category for quarterbacks as a rookie. I mean, the NFL is in good hands right now when you're talking about Jordan Love, C.J. Stroud, and the myriad of other young quarterbacks that are taking over the league. It is an amazing thing to see that transformation into the new NFL as the old guard is leaving. Aaron Rodgers leaving, Tom Brady leaving, Joe Flacco leaving, hopefully. Uh, that is, it is a great thing to see. Now, speaking of Joe Flacco, I got to say, once again, not a bad outing for him. I mean, it was 307 yards. Yes, he had the 2 picks, one of them by a guy that was just standing there waiting to have the ball thrown to him, which that was a hilarious thing in my opinion.
Yeah.
But his overall, it wasn't as bad as you would think for as lopsided as the score was. Houston just got on top of them, and you know put the beat down early on it. I mean, through halftime, they were at 24-14, which wasn't bad. But then Houston comes out, scores 3 touchdowns in the second half, and you're looking at a final score of 45-14. I mean, that is really dominating your opponent, but in the attempt to come back, you see good numbers for Flacco. It's just uh, the only season Flacco did not have an interception in the postseason was the year they won the Super Bowl. So that is, if you can turn him over, if you can hit him, sack him, he's going to rush a couple of throws. He's going to see a couple of ghosts out there and wind up throwing it to the wrong guy. But when you take a look at Houston's offense, that was put together by D'Amico Ryans in his first, coaching collection. And what he did was he brought Bobby Slowick with him from San Francisco, who was the passing game coordinator. And you can see the progress of that offense through what Slowick was able to put together. But also, you see Ben McDaniels, who was retained from the previous coaching regime, who used to be the Michigan quarterbacks coach and now the passing game coordinator for the Texans. They have been helping CJ Stroud develop, and Ben McDonald knows CJ Stroud from Big Ten play, and seeing the tape on him and knowing what to work with him on. And it has proven very effective for getting CJ Stroud comfortable, moving forward. But that is all credit to D'Amico Ryans. And just a small stat, it's only the 5th time a rookie head coach and quarterback make it to the playoffs. You know who the last team was that won in that scenario? It is the New York Jets. Rex Ryan and Mark Butt Fumble Sanchez. That was the last time that a rookie coach and rookie quarterback won a playoff game in their first season together. And sure, that kind of fell apart, but I see nothing but green grass in front of this team. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they have when they walk into Baltimore this upcoming week.
That actually, I think that segues perfectly into the question that I really want to ask you guys, and that's, are we so confident that Houston is going to run this division? Because let's not forget, there was a time when it seemed like the Titans were going to run the AFC South. Although, to be fair, I don't think there was ever a long-term solution there with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. Then it seemed like the Jaguars were going to run the division, and now the Texans just won it. And heck, let's not forget about the Colts and the phenomenal job that Shane Steichen did turning that team around from 4 wins to 9 wins without Anthony Richardson for most of the season. So how are we so sure that this is going to be Houston's division to run for some time here? Like, how are we so confident about that?
I'm confident in D'Amico Ryans as a defensive-minded coach and who lets his offense do what they need to do. To me, that is the Belichick plan, where he runs the defense. He is a phenomenal defensive coach, but he will let the offense cook the way they need to cook as far as the overall team, dynamic, as opposed to trying to be an offensive-minded coach, spending so much time on the offense and just letting the defense just wither away and die.
Yeah, I'm confident in the success of the Texans. And guys, let's not, forget just this year alone, the AFC North had three teams make the playoffs with the Steelers, Ravens, and the Browns. And they were the first, since the 1930s to have all four teams have a winning record. Well, this AFC South division could get fun really quick. I mean, with a healthy Anthony Richardson, healthy Jonathan Taylor, and this Colts team, they can definitely do some damage. But the Jags will still always be there. But they could be a fun division to really see if three of those teams can make the playoffs here in the next couple of years, because I think it could be possible, because we're seeing it with the AFC North right now. Granted, once a healthy Joe Burrow comes back, the
Yeah.
Bengals are going to be right up there with the Ravens. I will say that. But
I noticed I noticed you said nothing about the Titans, and I think we're all pretty much in agreement that the Titans are entering rebuild mode now, especially without Vrabel.
And
Yeah,
no Derrick Henry.
nope,
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah. Good point.
and that's going to be a fun topic to talk about in probably next couple episodes, is these big free agent destinations. Where will they end up? So Derrick Henry is one of them. But there's times, Ed, where I feel like me and you really share a mind, because this is twice this episode that you actually hit right on, and that is, we have seen an end of an era right now with head coaches in college football and NFL. We are seeing a beginning with DeMeco Ryans. Well, we also saw that with quarterbacks, the end of an era with the GOAT, Tom Brady, the Sheriff, Peyton Manning, and then Drew Brees. Well, guys, we are, like Ed said, in great hands with these quarterbacks, these up-and-coming quarterbacks, and CJ Stroud is one of them. I want to read you this stat, guys, because when you are in the same boat as two of these quarterbacks, well, I think great things are coming. Well, so CJ Stroud led the NFL in passing yards a game, and he also led the NFL in the best touchdown to interception ratio. Only quarterbacks all time to ever do that, well, that's Joe Montana in 1989, and that's Tom Brady in 2007. Tom Brady in 07, as we know, went undefeated all the way to the Super Bowl until they lost to the Giants. And then Joe Montana, I mean, that speaks for itself what he did in the 80s. So, guys, CJ Stroud being in that same category with those two quarterbacks, that's amazing. And guys, he's a rookie. This isn't an '07 season with Tom Brady, who already had several Super Bowls under his belt. No, this is a rookie in the NFL, and he put up those numbers. Guys, CJ Stroud is him, like Ed said earlier, and he's the real deal, and I'm excited to see his career. But another quarterback that we've talked about, that the media has talked about, and they've labeled him as him, that's Josh Allen with the Buffalo Bills. Guys, he is a mountain of a man out there at quarterback. Josh Allen he is a big boy. And to see him run like he does, I mean, it's like Cam Newton. No one really knew how big Cam Newton was until you were trying to tackle him. He's a giant. Well, same with Josh Allen. Well, guys, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills put my Pittsburgh Steelers playoff hopes to the rest last night. Or not, well, as we lost 31-17 to the Buffalo Bills. And Josh Allen, it makes me wonder, is he the biggest threat in these playoffs? And this is going to sound kind of contradicting, because I have said on here that Josh Allen can be very inconsistent, and I do stand by that. But when I say threat, I think he can be, because of his upside and because of his abilities. Does that mean that I think he is the best player or the best quarterback in these playoffs? I do not. But I do think that he is the biggest threat because of his playing ability, and his upside is as better head to head with Patrick Mahomes. But when you have no defenses out there, and we saw that in that Chiefs and Bills game, well, of course, you're going to have to do everything that you can. And Josh Allen did, but it just came down to the end where in overtime, well, Mahomes and his magic seemed to have been a little bit more. But Josh Allen is a huge threat, and we saw it last night against the Steelers, and with his legs ability and with his arm ability too. So, but I want to talk about the Steelers. I want to talk about just how vulnerable they are when TJ Watt is not there. They are now 1-11 in TJ Watt's career when he is not playing for them. So that just shows you that this team, and it's sad to even say, especially as me as a Steelers fan, they are incapable of playing without TJ Watt. He is as valuable as they come, and the numbers they don't lie. The Steelers defense is just horrible when he is not there. They give up almost double the amount of points when TJ Watt is not playing for them. So it, that's kind of embarrassing guy. I mean, TJ Watt is one of the best defensive players in the NFL right now, and his presence is always out there when he is playing to his best ability. So Steelers don't know how to play when TJ Watt's not there. And we had Mason Rudolph, who I think did a actually decent job besides throwing an interception in the red zone when you really needed points there. That really did hurt us. We did shoot ourselves in the foot several times last night with George Pickens' fumble, the interception in the red zone. Those are mistakes that the Steelers cannot make. And guys, Josh Allen is now 17-0 if he does not throw an interception or have a turnover. So that just shows you he does have a lot of turnovers. Josh Allen is known for that. But if he does not have a single turnover, all he does is win because he is 17-0 when he does not have a turnover. And well, last night was one of those games where he did not have a turnover and the Bills came out victorious. But there was a play that happened in this game, and the two plays actually, where it's almost unfair to play defense in the NFL now. I'm not saying this because it was my Steelers, but there was a play where first one was Patrick Peterson had a wide open sack, just wide open at Josh Allen, and you could see right at the end as he was going to tackle him, he let off a little bit because well, if you hit the quarterback just a little too hard or you hit him a little too high, you're getting that yellow flag. And I'm not talking about the terrible towel. I'm talking about a penalty. And Josh Allen is a big boy. You need to put everything you have into that guy or you're not going to bring him down. And well, that's what happened. Patrick Peterson let off just a little bit enough where he did not get the sack. So there's that where it's tough to be a defender. But then let's talk about later in the game. Josh Allen was running the ball and he ran it very successfully the entire game and did not slide once until towards the end of the game in the fourth quarter. And that's when the defender hit him. And there goes the yellow flag. There goes the penalty. I'm not saying whatsoever the Steelers would have won the game if that didn't happen. No. But it is impossible to play defense nowadays when you have quarterbacks who are either not sliding or possibly fake sliding. It just is not fair to the defense out there playing. And last night, I felt that was not fair. Josh Allen did not slide an entire game, the whole game. So, what do you do as a defender when you see that quarterback, that big quarterback out there running? You're going to try to tackle him because, well, he's been hard to tackle the entire game. And that's the one time he slid. So, it's not fair. It's tough. But Josh Allen is a threat on his feet, and you have to be prepared at all times. And now with these rules, you have to be prepared. It's the playoffs, so I'm very indifferent on that. If they should pick up a penalty flag or if they should throw a flag on a fake slide. I mean, Kenny Pickett's notorious for his fake slide, but that was in the college. So but I just did not like the fact that he didn't slide the whole game, and then the one time he did, that's when the penalty flag flies. But after the game, you saw a very frustrated Mike Tomlin. If you did not see this video, you go ahead and look it up. You can find it on Twitter or YouTube. But a reporter decided, let me ask him about his contract. Last year in his contract, and Mike Tomlin, he went out. He did not like that whatsoever. I get if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen, blah blah blah. But this is the after a loss in the playoffs, and there's just certain things you just try to avoid asking, and that was one of them. Mike Tomlin, well, he was fed up with it and he walked out. He made clear today, guys, I'm going to coach the Pittsburgh Steelers next year, and the Pittsburgh Steelers sound like they're standing by him, but we've heard this before at many levels. I'm going to be your coach next year, and guess what happens? I'm not. So we'll wait to see, but Mike Tomlin has had an incredible career in Pittsburgh, and he's extended his record even more with consecutive seasons to start a head coaching career with 500 or better. So Pittsburgh Steelers, they have a lot to think about going into next year, but team that also has a lot to think about going into next year. They share the same state as Pittsburgh, but that's Philadelphia Eagles. And David, you're wearing the hat, you're representing, you're happy. Let's talk about this Eagles and Bucks game.
And I really want to, but I really need to ask this question to you, Matthew, if you don't mind. There's a lot of fingers being pointed at Mike Tomlin, but why aren't more fingers being pointed at the GM? I mean, who the hell do you guys have? You got nobody on defense that strikes the fear of God into you, other than TJ Watt, obviously, and perhaps Minka Fitzpatrick. You got nobody on offense worth a damn. I mean, Kenny freaking Pickett is your number one quarterback, for crying out loud. Why is Tomlin getting so much hate for winning with an extremely limited roster?
Because head coaches always do. They're the face. How often do you see a team's GM? You see the face of the head coach. They're always going to get the blame, regardless. So, I think Omar Khan, who is our GM, he's done. I feel like pretty good, but Kenny Pickett, I think it's come down to it that he's not the guy. Yes, George Pickens, he shows that he has a lot of talent, and things did start to look better for some of the offense. But yeah, defense, they are going to need to make a lot of adjustments here, and it does start with the GM making these correct decisions on the route that this team is going to take this next year and so forth. So Mike Tomlin's always going to get the finger pointing, the blame, but that's just how it is as a head coach in the NFL.
And my
Yeah,
2 cents on it is that Mike Tomlin has raised, he started out, with a tremendous level of success. The fact that he has not had a losing record doesn't mean that he has been successful.
Mm-hmm.
He is, you could see that his teams have regressed over the years to be just above average, which is the worst place to be in the NFL because you're never picking in the top 10 and getting those game changing players, but you're never getting deep enough into the playoffs to make it worth your while to get players to go to the next step. So
Yeah.
he's kind of in that quagmire of team 10, team, let's say 14 to 20, when you're talking about draft positioning, which means he's not really going anywhere. He's not getting better and he's not getting worse. And that's almost, a worse thing to have happen to your franchise than, just completely tanking or winning the Super Bowl. We're talking at least 10 years now, is it? Where he hasn't really had more than 2 seasons, 10 wins or more. It's all been 8-8, 9-7, 9-6, just with the schedule changes over the past few
Yeah.
years. So I I think that he has done a good job, but I think there is something to be said about there needs to be some life infused into that organization, and it needs to come from somewhere. I don't care if you don't change Mike Tomlin as the head coach, but somewhere there needs to be some life brought back into the organization.
Yeah, 6 straight playoff losses for the Steelers. So that is going to reflect on the head coach.
yeah, certainly. And speaking of infusing life, well, we know one team in that same state that you talked about, Matthew, that also needs some life breathed into them, and that is, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles. But man, like, I predicted us to win this game 21-17. I figured that the momentum we had, like, we won 5 of our last 6 regular season games coming into the wild card round. The Eagles, quite literally the opposite. They came in having lost 5 of their last 6. So I thought we had a chance, but my gosh, I did not expect this absolute beatdown that we gave those guys. And listen, like I have been openly critical of our coaching staff all season. Okay, Todd Bowles especially, but credit where credit is due. Our coaching staff had an absolutely phenomenal game plan. Todd Bowles had a phenomenal game plan, and the way that our defense was just able to just relentlessly bully Philly's offensive line all night, just harass Jalen Hurts with all the blitzes that we came up with. And guys, keep in mind, this is an offensive line that is arguably the best offensive line in the NFL and has been the best or one of the best offensive lines for quite some time. And so the fact that Todd Bowles was able to scheme up a game plan to just completely obliterate that unit. Listen, there have been times where Todd Bowles' coaching made me want to throw my phone across the room, but there's also been times where his coaching made the biggest difference, like against the Eagles and against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And then let's talk about the offense. I mean, Baker Mayfield, like, shout out to that guy. Nobody wanted him in the offseason. Nobody gave him a chance when he came to Tampa. People were convinced that we were going to tank, including me. I cannot hide from that. But hey, he proved all of us wrong, man. And the way that Canales, I loved that Canales just immediately went for the kill shot right from the get go, and that's exactly what you need to do against one of the worst secondaries in the NFL, right? And then speaking of the Eagles here, I am just guys, I am just so. In my lifetime, I'm not sure I've ever seen a collapse this bad. In fact, the last time that I can remember a team getting off to a similar start and then stumbling down the stretch was the Houston Texans in 2012, if I remember correctly. Here's a not so fun fact: the Eagles are the first team in NFL history to start 10-1 and not even win 12 games. And it wasn't just the fact that they were losing guys, but they looked downright uncompetitive. And listen, I don't think I don't think that Nick Sirianni is going to lose his job, and I don't think he should lose his job. But man, oh man, this season it was increasingly obvious this season that the Eagles made the Super Bowl last year in spite of Sirianni and not because of him. Because when he lost both of his coordinators to head coaching positions, he got exposed. Okay, and listen, when you make the playoffs, you're more than likely going to lose your coordinators, and the Eagles were elite both offensively and defensively. So it's not a surprise that Steichen and Gannon were both picked up by the Colts and the Cardinals, respectively. But guys, a huge reason for the Eagles' collapse was because of Sirianni's failure to effectively replace his coordinators. Okay, he failed in that regard, and he's going to have a lot to answer for in the offseason. Like, this offseason is going to truly make or break him. Okay, like I said, I don't think he should be fired, and I've always been a firm believer in proving that the year before was not a fluke, right? It's like, all right, listen, a lot of good happened last year under your watch. This year, not so much, okay? But I'm going to give you one more chance to prove that last year wasn't a fluke, right? Things didn't go so well for you. What are you going to do? Okay. And we've seen examples of head coaches going through adversity, but then they became great coaches because of the adversity they went through. Kyle Shanahan, first season with the 49ers, went 6-10. Next season was 4-12, literally regressed. So it seemed like that experiment in San Francisco wasn't going to work out. Well, now Kyle Shanahan is regarded as a top 3, top 5 coach in the league. Okay, Dan Campbell got off to a horrible start in Detroit, was never really taken seriously as a head coach. Now he's regarded as one of the best coaches in the NFL. Okay, as far as Sirianni goes, this is really the first time in his head coaching career that he has faced true adversity. I know his first season, the Eagles went 9-8, but key phrase there: first season, the Eagles still made the playoffs, and at least then they had a really bright future, and like they had the sense that things were on the up under Sirianni. This is really the first time all in his entire in his short head coaching career so far that Sirianni has faced legitimate adversity, and it'll be really interesting to see how he's going to figure things out. Because guys, let me tell you, if he does not use this offseason to shape things up to prove that last year wasn't a fluke, well, Howie Roseman won't have to worry about firing him because the Philly fans are just going to run him out of town. But yeah, man, shout out to the Bucks. Nobody saw this coming, and I don't know if we're going to beat the Lions, man, but I'm just going to enjoy this as much as I can.
And you should enjoy it as much as you can, and I don't say that sarcastically. What the Bucks have done this year to make the playoffs and then beat the defending NFC champs like they did was impressive. But we are on to the next round. This is divisional round matchups here, and guys, we are in for a treat. We are spoiled because we get to see the Packers play the 49ers. I mean, you have a first round pick in Jordan Love versus Mr. Irrelevant and Brock Purdy. And don't let that fool you, because we saw what Tom Brady has done in his career, and Brock Purdy has done incredible things with the Niners. And then we have the Houston Texans at the Baltimore Ravens, and that is going to be just such a prime matchup between C.J. Stroud and Lamar Jackson. But guys, Dave was just talking about the Bucks here. This right here is going to be the battle of the former number one draft picks that have a resurgence in their career, and that's Baker Mayfield with the Bucks and Jared Goff and the Lions. Let's not forget that Goff and Baker were number one draft picks, so they do have that talent. They aren't a Jamarcus Russell bust. They do have that talent to still be in the NFL. And look, guys, their teams are in the playoffs. But lastly, this right here is a matchup that's kind of out of this world, when we have been spoiled with an amazing matchup with them before, and that is the Chiefs at the Bills. And it's the postseason, guys. We know Mahomes is going to show up. Josh Allen, we saw last night what he did against the Steelers, but this right here is going to be a very fun matchup, guys. So watch these games. But speaking of out of this world, the universe is bigger than we ever dreamed, and history is stranger than we've ever realized. From quantum mechanics to the wonder of the pyramids, Quirks of Creation is a podcast that looks at the mysterious from all corners of God's mysterious universe. Tune in with Jess and Elise for a conversation about culture, biblical texts, scientific discoveries, and more to uncover where we've been and where we might be headed. You can find them on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So go ahead, give them a like, subscribe, follow. They are Quirks of Creation, guys. And that is about all we have today, folks. There was a lot to cover. We hope that you guys enjoyed our coverage of these games, and we will have coverage of games to come. So go ahead and, if you can, hit that like, subscribe button, share these videos. But put in the comments how you feel, your predictions of these next games, because we do have some great games coming up here. So predictions for that, and predictions of some of these awards that are going to be coming out. We will be talking about that here shortly as well. So we appreciate all that you guys do, and we will continue to give you our very best. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third, and we are headed for home.